Okay, so Spellmonger Book 14, Hedgewitch. Before I start this, I know Terry sometimes watches these videos, and I just wanted to say that I did receive your package in the mail. And for those who don't know, Terry sent me a couple of, things in the mail for the Spellmonger series, including like the map of the Seven Door here, as well as these posters you see here on the wall. Let me see, do I have, as well as coffee mug, not your average Dark Lord. I thought that was cute. As well as a bunch of signed copies of the book. So, like High Mage and Knights Magi, several of the others. And I just wanted to, take the few minutes at the beginning of this video here and say, thanks, I really appreciate it. I never thought I would get even any sort of recognition for this in this sort of channel. This is just sort of a thing I do in my free time because, beats rewatching Friends, I guess. I've actually never seen Friends. I don't know why I said that. And again, I don't feel like I do the series nearly as much justice. These are sort of my rambly thoughts on the idea, on the books, which I think they deserve a little bit better, but I'm also not, conscientious enough to do a concrete breakdown page by page. So this is what we're gonna get until one of you who are much smarter than me start doing this. Trust me, if I can make it this far, you can do far better. In any case, Hedgewitch. This is a book from the perspective of Rondel and Pentandra, who we haven't seen much of in the past few books, and I have to imagine this is why, because we wanted to see a book specifically from their perspective, passing the last, I would say about 3 previous books. I think it starts just after Min was exiled from Seven Door, and it goes a little bit after Foot Wizard. So it's Rondel's and Pentandra's perspectives throughout those books and a little bit beyond, which I feel like is a good choice with some of the changes that happen. I'll get to that a little bit later. This feels like it's trying to be, okay, so the previous book was like a deconstruction of the wandering wizard trope, so you're like your Gandalf going from place to place, not really doing much magic sort of thing, but doing a lot of selling wisdom and knowledge and dealing with that sort of thing, and packing heat. Suppose I wasn't really in Lord of the Rings, but it would make Helm's Deep a shitload more cool. So, whereas that one was about the deconstruction of the wandering wizard trope, this one is more of a deconstruction of the oracle trope. The wise oracle who can see the future trope. Quick note about this. Sometimes when you say deconstruction, people get the wrong idea and assume that means it's sort of a cynical takedown of these sorts of things, but this is not that. It's true that Deadpool is a deconstruction of the superhero genre, but so is All-Star Superman.
I mean, luck? What coked out, glass pipe sucking freak show comic book artist came up with that little chestnut? Probably a guy who can't draw feet!
I saw everything. I saw how to save the world. I could have made everyone see. If it wasn't for you, I could have saved the world.
If it had mattered to you, Luthor, you could have saved the world years ago.
You're right.
They're not really the same thing. So when I say deconstruction, I just mean that I think Terry is trying to break down what makes these tropes work and why we do what they do. So, for example, why are prophecies always in rhyme?
And with a noble army at the helm, this master builder will thwart the Craggle and save the realm, and be the greatest, most interesting, most important person of all times. All this is true, because it rhymes.
Well, it's a mnemonic device so that the person prophesying things can actually remember it. as well as dealing with, like, the self-fulfilling prophecy type things, just, trying to stop this sort of thing, necessarily make it going to be happen, nobody's killing their father, well, trying to marry their mother, but you get my drift here. But yeah, so a lot of the wizardy stuff is very much about that kind of breakdown of the oracle trope. The future seeing or prophecy type thing. And it does that fairly well. It's not like the Wheel of Time, which the entire series is about breaking down the chosen one prophesied trope thing, but this does this fair, but it does a good examination of the type of person actually doing the prophesizing, why they do what they do, and how their life is affected by the ability to see the future, which is to say it's pretty crappy. But that's not all that's going on in this book. One thing I have to point out that I am so glad I got to read another one of these, because I have been complaining a lot recently about things failing at being political. So I complained that, like, the last book series I read, it was political t-ball. It was there to set up the politics was there to set up the main character for hitting a home run, if you catch my drift. And I was also talking about how Brooklyn Nine-Nine really didn't get political enough, because I didn't feel like the writers actually understood any sort of political divide that they were sort of getting into. But thank God I got to read this, because even with these, like, kind of made up positions and, the differing sides in this, in this made up world, this is a way more engaging politically than anything I've read or watched recently. Every person has their own perspective, and it's treated seriously. And it's not treated like it's a straw man. So you can see Prince Tavern's perspective on things, even if you think, wow, this guy is kind of a douchebag. And I love that the person who understands, and I love that in this series, it's Pentandra or Min who can understand differing perspectives, who are the people who ultimately come out ahead. It's not the person who can most vigorously argue for their own side. It's the person who can understand the perspectives of multiple people intersecting who has the greatest political acumen, rather than the way more cliched stuff I've seen recently, where it's just one side that is, righteously fighting against whatever straw man. And I gotta say, that is just so fucking refreshing to read, because it actually seems to take the politics of this world seriously. Which means that when we actually do get to and then everybody clapped moment, it actually feels earned. Because there's a moment in this book near the end where where we're watching from Pentandra's perspective, and we're watching Min talk to the Alcalon Council, and it just feels so earned. That moment where he's just talking to these guys and saying, "You're a bunch of assholes who are going to abandon all of us," and just, it feels so earned, because you understand every perspective in here. On that note, I do have to say something about how the perspectives of this book, being particularly from Pentandra's and Rondell's perspective, does change what we see in this world, because, it necessarily would, because these are not the same people. One of the things I noted from this is that Pentandra tends to have a way better feel for, how do I say this, others' sexuality. I think Min ever mentioned that Turleman, I can't say his name right, but you know who I'm talking about, had a squire who he was really close to. But Pentandra picks up on that very easily. And it would make sense, given her, different culture, for one thing. The, Imperials tend to be far more laissez-faire about the whole, sleeping with another guy thing, as well as her particular background. And, that's always a nice thing to see, that when you can have two characters look at have the same conversation, but the things that they notice from their perspective, you can see like a character go through like the same kind of basic conversation or the same basic story, but because it's from their perspective, it's interesting. That's always something worth praising, if you ask me. You know, I can watch the same story twice as long as the different perspectives lend something to it. And I feel like it was an especially good choice to have this after the events of Foot Wizard, because I don't want to spoil it too much, but Min goes through a pretty profound change, and it's nice that we can see that somebody is noticing that some of the person in this world who probably knows him the best, next to Talia, noticing these things, so we can get a little bit more used to you know, that this is like a huge change for this character, because we're seeing it from the perspective of somebody who is a very close friend. Anyway, if you need this in a sentence, I feel like the perspective adds quite a bit to this story. We're watching this from Pentandra's perspective, not necessarily from Terry's perspective, if you catch my drift. I don't know, did that last sentence make any sense? I don't know. One last thought I had while reading this is, I was recently listening to a lecture series about the origins of Old English, and one of the things that the lecturer was talking about that is that a lot of people in England at the time that Old English was being spoken didn't really have a use for it at the time. You didn't really have a use for the week, so there wasn't really a everything was done by the cycles of the moon, so it would be like, come to this moot after the full moon, but it would be like 2 or 3 days later than that sometimes. It was a very loose time frame, because some cultures are like that. And in any case, there weren't any days of the week, unless you were like a educated person from southern England who spoke Latin, because the Romans had a use for the days of the week. And all of this is a long-winded way of me saying, do they have the concept of a week in this universe? In this world? I mean, I can see how that would be something that you just kind of never give up once you do it, and, you know, if you don't know about the history of the world, they did have the use of a week, they did have the concept of a week before, but I don't know if they just sort of dropped that, but I'm asking, did they ever drop that, or would you ever drop that? I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but my main question is, do they actually use Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Or would they say they're different gods on those as the days of the week too? I don't know. That's just sort of a random question that popped into my mind that ultimately boils down to, this really doesn't matter, but I was thinking about it. Does the concept of a week exist? And if so, do they name it after the Germanic gods still? Or did they adopt local gods to be their days of the week? I don't know. That was just something that came up while I was reading this, and I guess it doesn't matter, and if I never get an answer, I won't care. Anyway, that was my thoughts on Hedgewitch. It's a good deconstruction of the Oracle trope while being a good political drama that gains a lot from a differing perspective than we normally see. Do I recommend it? Well, again, it's book 14 on this series. Why are you watching this if you're not going to read this one?
Do it! It is your destiny!
Funny thing about destiny. Sometimes fate has other plans.